The interview suite was bright, too bright. The kind of light you used on things you didn't intend to keep human. Dark Margins presents Interrogation Room 504 by Ian Hand. The smell hit first. Disinfectant, hot plastic, something faintly metallic, warm circuitry inside the walls. It was like a hospital corridor that had learned to hate. A year ago, the smell had been cheap coffee and wet coats, the stale comfort of a public building. Back when this place belonged to the council. Back when there was a council, and you could take a good guess at what they did inside a building like this. Now it belonged to someone else. The plaque on the wall hadn't been there then. Brushed steel, bolted to beige paint. The kind of thing you'd need power tools to remove. It sat there like it belonged. The words etched deep into it. Residency Compliance Directorate, RCD. Fairness through verification. Under the text was the emblem of the Western Alliance of Fascist States. A starburst behind a handshake, ringed by tiny flags in a neat circle. The stars and stripes sat at the top, taking up more space than all the others combined. The Union Jack had been reduced to just another flag. Greenland and Iceland nestled beside it like polite cousins at a funeral. Canada was there too. The rest of the circle was South America, the ones people couldn't name without looking them up. At the far end of the corridor, a wall-mounted screen played the same silent loop it always played. Smiling troops stepping off planes, waving at cheering crowds that looked like stock footage. A chyron crawled along the bottom. Harmonization Progress Update. Compliance up 12%. Unrest down 19%. Beneath that, in smaller text, Shared Security, Shared Future. Report anomalies. Register suspicious activity. Keep Britain safe. It wasn't a request. It was a reminder of what the state expected now. Not just compliance, but active participation. Officer Halden didn't look at the screen as he walked. He'd stopped seeing it in the way you stop seeing the crack in your kitchen ceiling. It only registered when it widened, or plaster started to fall on your head. He approached the door. Interrogation Room 504. His keycard worked on the first try. Maybe it was going to be a good day. He pushed the door open and let it swing shut behind him. The lock clicked into place with the soft finality of a mortuary drawer sliding shut. The interview suite was bright, too bright. It stripped you down to skin, sweat, tremors. It made time meaningless. Morning or night, it was always the same white glare. The kind of light you used on things you didn't intend to keep human. The boy sat at the metal table with his hands cuffed through a fixed ring. 17, if the intake form was right. But the intake form was never right. It was whatever the system had decided it would be. His face had the battered, swollen look of someone who'd been made to learn something quickly. One eye was half shut. His lip had split and dried. A bruise bloomed along his jaw like ink in water. He wore a cheap grey hoodie and joggers that clung where they'd dried after some earlier indignity. Rain, sweat, or piss. Maybe all three, judging by the smell. Halden set his folder down with care, aligning it with the table edge the way he'd been taught. The act soothed him. Corners, lines, order. A small ritual against mess. Outside, in the corridor, the soldiers on the propaganda loop kept smiling, and the crowd kept waving. His uniform was British cut. They'd insisted on that, for continuity. But the patch on his shoulder wasn't. Starburst handshake. Under it, in smaller letters, Harmonization Enforcement. There was a second patch below, issued last month. Alliance Standard Authorized. It was a promotion of sorts, a wider remit, sharper teeth, but still meant others could walk into his room and override him whenever they liked. The building still had Union Jack bunting on the reception desk, but the chain of command now ran far from Westminster. Halden sat opposite the boy and didn't open the folder yet. He wanted the boy to look at it first. He wanted him to see there was a file for him, that somewhere he already existed inside a set of boxes. "Name," Halden said. The boy's throat moved as he swallowed. When he spoke, it came out hoarse. "I told them. I told—" "Name," Halden repeated, not louder, just flatter. The voice you used on a misbehaving dog in public. The boy blinked, slow and wet. "Jamal." "Surname?" A pause, a flicker of calculation. Not strategy. Fear. He looked down at his cuffed wrists as though the answer might be written there. "Ben Ali," he said finally. Halden wrote it down, even though it was already on the form. Writing made it real. Writing also made it his. "National insurance number?" Q. The boy stopped. He licked his split lip without thinking and winced. "I don't know. It's on my phone." "Which you don't have." "I had it. He swallowed again. "They took it." Halden nodded as if this were merely a missing stapler. "Address." The boy's eyes darted to the corner of the room, the black dome of the camera, the instinct of a child desperately looking for an adult to save them. Halden didn't look at it. He never did. It was always there. It was always on. It never helped. "I want my mum," the boy said, voice cracking as if he hadn't intended to say it yet. "Please, I'm a kid. I want my mum." Halden let the silence sit. The training videos, branded with Alliance logos and a bright, neutral American voice, always said, "Let the silence do the work." Silence was a tool. It was also a punishment. "You are over the age of 16, Halden said. "The Alliance does not deem it necessary to have a responsible adult present at interview." The boy stared at him, eyes shining, not with defiance, with disbelief, as if he'd expected, foolishly, that an adult in a uniform would have some basic human line he wouldn't cross. "But I haven't been able to tell anyone I'm here," Jamal sobbed, snot streaming from his nose. Halden opened the folder. 3 pages and a photograph. The photograph was the boy at intake. Head slightly slumped, one eye already swelling. Behind him, a whiteboard with a number on it, not a name. In the corner of the image, the edge of a flag, not the Union Jack, but the starburst handshake banner, always present like a watermark. "Jamal Ben Ali," Halden read. "No active residency token on file. No registered education placement. No verified address. No biometric confirmation in the National Register." "That's not true," the boy said quickly, stupidly. I go to college. I'm at—" Halden held up a finger. Not aggressive, a teacher's gesture, a wait your turn gesture. The boy fell quiet, breathing hard through his mouth like he'd been running. "We picked you up at 21:47 yesterday," Halden continued, "outside Brigstow Central Transport Interchange. You were observed behaving suspiciously." The boy made a small broken sound in his throat. "Suspicious?" Halden turned a page with deliberate neatness. "Loitering, avoiding cameras, concealing your face." It was raining, the boy said. I had my hood up. Everyone did. Halden didn't react. You didn't need to contradict. You simply recorded. He slid a tablet across the table. On it, paused, was grainy security footage. The concourse outside the interchange, lit greenish by street lamps. People moving like ghosts through drizzle. At the curb sat an Alliance patrol van, matte black. The logo was on the side like a corporate mark. In the background, on a billboard, a smiling family held up plastic cards. Don't make us guess your status. Verify it. It was a world made of messages now. You couldn't look anywhere without being told what you should do and who you were. You know why you're here, Halden said. The boy's mouth trembled. Because I don't have my bio card. You're here, Halden said, because you assaulted an RCD officer. The boy stared at him for a full second, trying to understand the shapes of the words. Then his face changed, a sudden rush of terror. No, he said, too loud. No, I didn't. I didn't do anything. Halden tapped play. The footage rolled. A hooded figure moved across frame. Another figure stepped into view, uniform, reflective striping. The camera angle was poor. Everything was half hidden by people passing. You could see a jolt, a blur. The uniformed figure stumbled back out of frame. Then the hooded figure ran. Halden paused it and zoomed in, pinching the screen. Pixels enlarged into a mosaic that could have been anyone, anything. A human shape reduced to suggestion. You see, Halden said, calm. That's you. That's not... The boy's voice broke. He shook his head, frantic. You can't even see his face. Halden watched him struggle and felt the small, familiar lift in his chest. Relief. Not pleasure in pain, exactly. The relief of clarity. The sense that the world made sense because he was sitting on the correct side of the table. He hadn't always done this. Not long ago, he'd sat behind a different desk, in a different building, deciding what people deserved. The same faces, the same excuses, the same desire for something for nothing. Only then there were safeguards, policies, oversight. The Alliance had simplified things. Now the paperwork didn't limit power. It delivered it. You ran, Halden said. Because they... Jamal's eyes filled and spilt over. Because they grabbed me. They grabbed me and said... They said I was... Halden leaned forward slightly. Not kindly, not cruelly, simply closer, so the boy had nowhere to look except at him. They said what? Jamal's chest hitched. His shoulders began to shake. I want my mum, he whispered. Please, please. Halden sat back again, let the moment pass like a train through a station. Jamal Ben Ali, he said, using the full name because it sounded formal and final. Under the Harmonized Security Act, you are obliged to cooperate with residency verification. Assaulting an RCD officer is an aggravated offense. It carries removal. The boy's eyes snapped up. Removal? Yes, Halden said, as if explaining a bus route. Return. Where? The boy sounded small, like a child again. I was born here. Halden shrugged, just slightly, the shrug of a man discussing weather. That will be determined. The boy began to cry properly then, not cinematic, not beautiful, just a leaking, shaking collapse of the face. I didn't do it, he said over and over. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Halden looked down at the form and ticked a box. Subject non-compliant. Subject denies offense. Subject displays emotional volatility. He'd always liked that phrase, emotional volatility. It made a human response sound like a chemical hazard. He clicked the tablet off and slid it back. "I'm going to give you a choice," Halden said. "You can sign a statement confirming the incident and agreeing to expedited processing. That will help you. Or you can refuse, and we proceed under escalated protocol." Jamal stared at him through his tears, face shining. What does that mean?" "It means," Halden said, "you stop making this difficult." "I want my mum," Jamal whispered again. It was all he had left, a rope in the dark. Halden pushed the pen across the table. The boy didn't touch it. Halden waited. He could wait longer than any teenager. He had a good salary. He had a big house in a nice neighborhood. He had a desk with his name on it. And he had nothing else to do for the rest of the day. The boy had a hoodie, piss-stained joggers, and a bruised face. At last, Halden sighed, controlled disappointment, and wrote something in the file. He pressed the call button set into the table. A second later, the door opened and 2 enforcement men came in. Broad, bored, moving with the easy entitlement of people who never had to explain themselves. Their kit was a mismatch. British webbing with imported Alliance cuffs, American zip ties, an Icelandic winter glove still on one hand, even indoors, like the man had forgotten to take it off and nobody dared mention it. One of them already had a black hood folded in his hand like laundry. Jamal's eyes widened. "No," he said, suddenly raw and animal. "No, please, I didn't." They pulled him up by the arms. The cuffs clanked. His trainers scraped the floor. He tried to twist away, but he was too thin and too hurt and too young. Halden stood as well, smoothing his jacket. "Subject refuses cooperation," Halden said. He liked saying subject. It kept the world clean. As Jamal was dragged toward the door, he twisted his head, frantic, searching Halden's face for something, anything. Proof he was looking at a person, not a machine. Halden gave him none. The door shut. The room returned to its hum. Halden sat down again and completed the final tick boxes with the careful satisfaction of a man closing a job. A job well done. He gathered the folder, squared it, and placed it in the out tray. Then there was a knock. Halden looked up, irritated. The knock was soft, not the confident rap of a superior, but the hesitant tap of an underling. "Come." A junior officer stepped in, young, hair still trying to look individual despite regulations. He didn't meet Halden's eyes. "Sir," he said, "message from your sister. Urgent. She left it with reception. She said you have to call." Halden blinked. The intrusion felt obscene. His sister lived in Stoke, kept her head down, did everything right. His sister didn't call reception. "What is it?" Halden snapped. The junior swallowed. "She didn't say. Only, she sounded..." "Fine," Halden said. He dismissed the boy with a flick. The junior left. The door clicked shut. Halden snatched up the folder and strode back along the disinfectant-smelling corridor to his office. He sat down at the desk with his name on it, head buzzing. He frowned at his hands, as though they were suddenly unfamiliar. Then he pulled out his phone, his personal one, the one with the cracked case he'd never replaced, and dialed. It rang twice. His sister answered on the third, breathless. "Adam," she said, and her voice was already broken. Halden felt a cold weight in his stomach. "Sally? What's—" "They've taken him," she said. "They've taken Theo." Halden's brain stalled on the name. "Theo?" My Theo, she hissed, as if he might not understand which Theo. Her voice rose, skidding toward hysteria. They came to the house. 2 vans, no markings. They had guns, masks. They said there was a compliance issue. They said he didn't match his register, that he looked Asian. He'd resisted arrest. Adam, he's 16. Halden's mouth went dry. He has a token. I sorted it. They didn't care, Sally said, and now she was crying so hard the words were wet, almost incomprehensible. They stopped him. He didn't have his bio card on him. He'd gone to the shop. They said he was dealing drugs. Adam, he wasn't. He didn't. He's a good boy. He was scared. He ran. And they followed him home. Halden stood up so fast, his chair tipped over backwards. A distant part of him noticed the symmetry of it all. Assaulted an officer, caught dealing drugs, no bio card, Asian, over the age of 16. The Alliance does not deem it necessary to have a responsible adult present. Like an echo reverberating along the empty corridor outside. Like phrases printed on detention papers. Where did they take him? Halden demanded. I don't know, Sally sobbed. They wouldn't tell me. They told me to check the portal. The portal just says, case pending. Adam, he was crying. He was crying for me. They put a hood on him. Halden's fingers tightened around the phone until his knuckles ached. This is a mistake, he said, and heard how stupid it sounded as he said it. This is a mistake. I'll sort it. How? Sally's voice sharpened with desperation. How do you sort it when nobody tells you anything? Adam, please. Please. Halden swallowed. I'll make calls, he said. I'll pull strings. I'll... Do it, Sally whispered. Please do it now. Halden hung up. He began. He called his line manager. Voicemail. He called the processing hub. Automated menu. Press 1 for case information. Press 2 for residency verification. Press 3 for Alliance priority requests. His thumb hovered over 3, and for the first time, he understood what it meant to live beneath someone else's flag. The system did not recognize Theo's name. He called the regional directorate. Reception transferred him twice and then cut him off. He called a colleague in removals. The colleague laughed once, uneasy. Adam, don't. Not on my phone. He called another. No answer. He called a third. I can't access that, the voice said, too quickly. Different division. By the 7th call, Halden could feel sweat in his collar. By the 10th, his hands were shaking. He stared at the desk phone, bland plastic, institutional grey, and it looked suddenly like a prop from a show he'd watched as a teenager. A state apparatus. A parody. Only this one had teeth. He opened the public portal, the one they told people to use, as if fear could be resolved by a login, and typed Theo's details. Case pending. No location, no contact, no officer name. Nothing you could grip. Halden sat down slowly. In his mind, without permission, a picture slid into place. Jamal dragged away, crying for his mum. A hood folded like laundry in a man's hand. The phrase, assaulted an officer, stamped and stamped and stamped until it became a person's fate. He saw it not as a scene he'd witnessed, but as a scene he'd authorized. A job well done. Halden lowered his head into his hands. The room hummed. The lights burned. The camera watched. And for the first time since the Western Alliance flags had gone up outside the building, since the speeches about partnership and security and shared values had drowned out the sound of doors closing, Officer Halden began to cry. Not neatly, not quietly, with the stunned, humiliated grief of a man realizing too late that the rules he enforced were not rules at all. They were a hunger that would devour anyone it chose. And that hunger did not stop at the border of his own family. His work mobile pinged on the desk. He glanced over and read the message through his tears. It was a notification from the compliance portal. Thank you for doing your part. Today, you helped keep Britain safe. Compliance score, +5. New case assigned. Interrogation Room, 504.